Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I live in a mobile home on property passed down for generations. It belonged to my great-grandma, my grandma, and now my mama. If something happened to my mama, the land would go to my brother and I. Since he already has a house with my sister-in-law, the land and house would belong to me. Me and my parents were talking one day, and I mentioned I was craving peaches. I usually get them in a jar with sweet juice. Mama said that's something she wanted to get for a while, some peach trees. I got excited and went to a cooperative. It's a place where you can get gardening tools, seeds, trees, plants, fishing gear, and more. It's like a mall for country folks. I found the peach trees, called Mama, gave her the price, and told her there were plum trees too. I got one plum tree and one peach tree. I got plant food, bricks, and stuff to decorate around them. I got home and my dad asked if I could plant them because he had to take a family friend to therapy. I grew up a tomboy, so I know what I'm doing. I came out in my messy clothes, gloves, and whatever else I needed. I had the stuff laid out in the yard. I knew where I was planting them, but something in my gut was throwing me off. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? I had that feeling. I looked up and saw a white car driving slowly. I wasn't about to get kidnapped in broad daylight. For a female, I know how to take care of myself. I went in the house and got my knife for protection and put it in my pocket. We have two entrances in our yard that are connected. You come in one entrance and can go out the other. I came back outside and the same car came back, pulled into our yard and went out the other way. Now I was creeped out. I grabbed my phone and put 911 on speed dial. I've lived in this neighborhood my whole life, but I don't like going out much. I put the phone next to me on my small table and started digging holes for our trees. When I finished digging, I grabbed the plant food and trees. I fixed them nice and straight and put the dirt back over. Now it was time to decorate. My favorite part. I grabbed my bricks and everything else. Not even 5 minutes after I started, the same car drove by. This time it came into the second entrance, pulled into the yard and stopped. A tall, lanky guy stepped out and walked over to me. He asked how much I charged for gardening work. I was confused by his question. I told him I wasn't working, just planting in my yard. He looked at me funny. He didn't believe I wasn't a professional gardener and said the owner must have paid me. He told me to give him an estimate, calling me a man who could do the work. I know I'm a tomboy, but how do you mistake a female with female body proportions for a man? I got angry and told him 3 things. I wasn't a man. I didn't do gardening work professionally. This was my house and he was trespassing. I asked if he saw the no trespassing sign on the tree by the entrance. It was a big black sign with red capital letters. He got an attitude. He kept saying he just wanted an estimate for yard work. He still called me man despite me telling him otherwise. I was beyond furious. My phone was on 911 speed dial, so I warned him to leave, or the police would come. I had already pressed dial. He stood there, got out of his car, and told me no. He threatened that someone would hear about how I refused service. Then he asked where my company van or truck was. I got even angrier while giving the 911 operator my address. I screamed at him to get off my property. I reminded him this was my house and I wasn't a man. I warned that he'd get beaten if he didn't leave. I had my hand in my pocket on my knife button in case he tried something. He kept arguing with me. A few minutes later, the police showed up. It was a cop I've known since childhood. The chief, who was my brother's boss when my brother was a policeman. He knew my family. I was glad to see him. When the chief asked what was happening, the lanky guy went crazy before I could talk. He said I worked for a garden company and cursed at him, threatened him, and assaulted him. The cursing and threatening were true, but I never touched him. The chief looked at me, then the house, then back at me. He recognized me and asked if that was really me. He called me baby girl. I confirmed by taking off my garden hat to show my afro puff and put on my glasses. The lanky guy's jaw dropped as he looked at me. The chief told him I was female and lived in this house. He said he knew me and my family well. He explained I didn't work for any company. My family just liked gardening. He told the guy he was under arrest for refusing to leave private property. The chief mentioned the guy was lucky I hadn't actually hurt him. He said I would have been allowed to defend myself on my property. He added that I grew up wrestling with his boys and could have hurt the guy. Then the chief told him to put his hands behind his back and said he'd call a tow truck. I stood there smiling. When the chief was leaving, my dad pulled up and asked what happened. After I explained, he pressed charges against the guy for trespassing. Now we have fresh peaches and plums that are so sweet, they've given me sugar bumps. Those are tiny bumps from eating something extremely sweet that get very itchy. I'm not diabetic. I get tested every month. I've switched doctors and still don't have diabetes. My doctor says my sugar bumps aren't severe because I stopped eating so many sweets. I don't eat sweets all day. I drink water and eat veggies. I usually only eat sweets on weekends, but now only when I have a test. On Friday, July 24th, I'm getting cheesecake because I want it. I'm glad the entitled guy who trespassed mistook me for a man and lied about me got what he deserved. People need to take no for an answer and respect others' property. I think he was looking for gardening services, but that doesn't excuse trespassing or refusing to leave. How hard is it to see I'm a woman? I might dress for yard work, but come on. That's my story about the entitled trespasser who couldn't tell a homeowner from a landscaper or a woman from a man. I got my trees planted and the chief handled things. Having connections in a small town helps. I have more stories, but I'll save those for later. Between entitled people and sweet fruits, I've got enough to deal with. I started working for food delivery apps 3 years ago when my main job cut my hours. The flexibility fit well with my martial arts training schedule. I never thought I'd use those skills during a food delivery. Last Tuesday, I logged into the app for my afternoon shift. I picked up 2 orders, one from a burger place and one from a Thai restaurant. The Thai order took a little longer because they were busy. The first customer lived in an apartment complex with terrible parking. The building had no elevator, so I walked up 3 flights of stairs. This order was marked hand to customer, which always takes longer. I knocked and waited. No answer. I called the customer's phone. No answer. I sent a message through the app. Finally, they answered the door. The customer was friendly but clearly forgot they ordered food. They thanked me. I headed to my car for the second delivery. The app navigation led me to a nice neighborhood. I pulled up to the address about 28 minutes after picking up both orders. This order was also marked hand to customer. I grabbed the Thai food bag and walked to the front door. The doorbell had a camera which lit up when I pressed it. A woman answered the door. She was tall, blonde, and looked angry the moment she saw me. She complained that I took too long and accused me of driving all over town except to her house. Her voice was loud enough that neighbors could probably hear. I kept my voice calm and explained I had 2 assigned orders and was following the app's delivery sequence. I suggested she contact customer support if she had a problem. My phone showed the delivery was still within the app's estimated time window. She got angrier and demanded her food be remade for free. She threatened to call the restaurant and get me fired. I explained I don't work for the restaurant but am an independent contractor. This made her even madder. She clapped her hands between words and told me to wait because she had something for me. Her tone made me nervous. I decided to leave rather than escalate the situation. As I turned to walk away, a man's voice shouted from inside the house. The front door opened wider and a man stepped onto the porch. He was tall and looked athletic. Both he and the woman wore wedding rings. He yelled at me to stop where I was. My training taught me never to turn your back on a potential threat. I faced him while continuing to back toward my car. He demanded I give them a refund or face consequences. I tried explaining again that only the app could issue refunds, not drivers. Before I could finish talking, he lunged forward and shoved me hard with both hands. I stumbled back but stayed on my feet. I warned him clearly not to touch me again. Instead of backing off, he threw a wild punch at my head. I leaned back to avoid it. The momentum of his missed punch left him off balance. I countered with a front kick to his stomach. The kick landed solidly. He hunched forward. With his head now lower, I threw a quick 1-2 combination. Both punches connected with his face. He dropped to one knee. I stepped back to give him space and told him to stay down so I could leave. His wife was now recording with her phone from the doorway. Instead of staying down, he got up with rage in his eyes. He shouted that he would kill me. He charged forward, throwing more wild punches. I slipped the first punch. The second caught me in the shoulder. I ducked under his third swing and circled behind him. We grappled. He threw elbows wildly, one catching me in the cheek. The blow stunned me. I managed to trip him, and we both fell onto the front lawn. He rolled aggressively, and I ended up in mount position on top of him. He kept thrashing and yelling threats. He tried to bench press me off several times. I told him I would get off when he calmed down. Instead, he escalated by trying to punch, scratch, and even bite me. I had to defend myself with hammer fists to get him to cover up. Once he covered his face, I shifted my weight higher on his chest. This position let me pin his arms with my knees. A neighbor across the street had come outside to watch. I called out asking them to call the police. The wife was still recording but conveniently not filming when her husband attacked me. We stayed locked in this position until I heard sirens. 2 police cars pulled up with lights flashing. 4 officers approached with hands near their weapons. They ordered me to get off the man and lie face down. I complied immediately. They handcuffed me first and put me in the back of a patrol car. Through the window, I watched as the wife showed officers her phone video. She was pointing at me and talking rapidly. The husband stayed on the ground, holding his face. An ambulance arrived. Paramedics checked the husband but found only minor injuries. After a while, an officer finally came to get my statement. He asked why I assaulted a man on his own property. I explained everything from the beginning: the delivery, the wife's complaints, and the husband's unprovoked attack. The officer said the wife claimed I threatened her and attacked her husband when he defended her. When he asked if I had proof, I remembered my dash cam. The camera faced forward but could record audio inside the car. I had left my windows down so it should have captured our voices. The officer checked my car and reviewed the footage. His attitude changed after watching it. The video showed the front porch partially, and the audio clearly captured the husband's threats and the sounds of the altercation. Even better, the neighbor across the street had a doorbell camera that recorded the entire incident. This footage showed the husband pushing me first in my subsequent self-defense. The officers removed my handcuffs and apologized. They took statements from me and the neighbor. I watched as they placed the husband in handcuffs and put him in a patrol car. The wife started crying and yelling at the officers. I filed an official police report and pressed charges for assault. The responding officer gave me his card and the case number. He told me the husband would likely face charges for assault and making criminal threats. The officer also advised me to get a medical check because of the blow to my face. My cheek was swelling and I had scratches on my arms from the struggle. I drove to an urgent care center after leaving the scene. The doctor documented my injuries. When I got home, I contacted the food delivery app's support team. I reported the incident with a police case number and photos of my injuries. The support agent assured me the couple would be banned from the platform. 3 days later, a detective called to follow up on the case. He told me the district attorney was pressing charges against the husband for assault and making criminal threats. The detective asked if I would testify in court if needed. I agreed. He mentioned they found my martial arts training history and asked questions about the level of force I used. I explained that I used only the minimum force necessary to defend myself. The detective seemed satisfied. 2 weeks later, I received an official letter from the district attorney's office. The letter confirmed the charges against the husband and included a court date for a preliminary hearing. I called the victim advocate listed in the letter to ask questions about the process. She explained I might need to testify. I took a day off from deliveries to attend the hearing. At court, I saw the husband and wife for the first time since the incident. They glared at me from across the room. The husband had a lawyer who approached me before the hearing. He offered a deal where his client would plead guilty to a lesser charge if I dropped my personal injury claim. I declined. The hearing was brief. The judge reviewed the evidence, including both videos. The husband's lawyer requested a plea deal. The prosecutor agreed to reduce charges in exchange for a guilty plea. The final agreement gave the husband 6 months of probation, 30 hours of community service, and mandatory anger management classes. The court also issued a restraining order requiring him to stay at least 500 feet away from me. He had to pay my medical expenses plus $200 for lost wages. The judge warned him that violating the restraining order would result in jail time. I felt the punishment was fair. After the hearing, the prosecutor thanked me for my cooperation. She mentioned cases like this happen more often than people realize. Delivery drivers face harassment and threats frequently, but most incidents go unreported. I still do martial arts training. I never imagined food delivery would require combat skills, but I'm grateful for my training. It's been 6 months since the incident, and I haven't had any serious problems with customers. I still enjoy the flexibility of delivery work, but I'm more aware of potential dangers. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened without my training or the video evidence. The entitlement of some people over a food delivery delay still amazes me. But at least the story has a satisfying ending, and maybe it helped make things safer for other drivers too. I test industrial circuit breakers for a living. These are the big versions of the switches in your home's electrical panel. The ones I work with control power to huge industrial equipment. Most circuit breakers have two protection methods: thermal and magnetic. The thermal part heats up before tripping the breaker for small overloads. The magnetic part reacts instantly to high currents. Some breakers, like ones for fire pumps, only have magnetic trip elements. This makes sense because you don't want a fire pump shutting off during a fire. 2 years ago, I was testing breakers at a chemical plant. My job was to make sure each breaker would trip correctly when overloaded. I usually tested thermal elements first, let them cool, then tested magnetic elements. The customer rep watching me got used to this pattern. He was middle-aged with glasses and kept mentioning his engineering degree without anyone asking. I'll call him Mr. Engineer. Everything went fine until a fire pump breaker came to my station. I set up to test only the magnetic element since that's all it had. That's when the problem started. Mr. Engineer asked why I skipped the thermal testing. I told him this was a magnetic-only breaker. He said there was no such thing. I showed him the manufacturer's documentation showing only the magnetic trip curve with no thermal curve. He claimed the missing thermal curve didn't mean it lacked a thermal element and told me to test it anyway. I asked how long to run the test since I had no manufacturer's curve. He said the International Electrical Testing Association manual stated that without a curve, anything under 300 seconds would be good. I asked him to sign a paper confirming he wanted this test. He signed without thinking twice. I tried one more approach to change his mind. I called my co-worker on the radio saying I was about to test the thermal element on a fire pump breaker. My co-worker told me the breaker didn't have one and I would destroy it. I told him I'd already explained this to Mr. Engineer, who wouldn't believe me. My co-worker said he was coming over. 5 minutes later, my co-worker arrived. He had 20 years of experience in the field. He told Mr. Engineer the breaker had no thermal element and testing it would destroy it. Mr. Engineer told us we were both wrong. He reminded us he was an engineer while we were just technicians. When my co-worker started mentioning the need for a signature, Mr. Engineer cut him off. He yelled that he already signed and we should do the test. My co-worker looked at me and stepped back. I set up the equipment and started the test. All morning, breakers with thermal elements had been tripping in 8 to 10 seconds. For this test, 10 seconds passed with nothing happening. Then 20 seconds. Around 30 seconds, the breaker started smoking a little. By 40 seconds, smoke poured out, and my hand hovered over the stop button. The smell of burning insulation filled the air. My co-worker stood with his arms crossed, watching Mr. Engineer's face change. I wouldn't stop until he admitted his mistake. According to him, it wouldn't fail until 300 seconds passed. At 55 seconds, the smoke got thicker. I reminded him we were still 245 seconds from his limit and asked if he wanted to continue. His face changed from confidence to panic. Just before 60 seconds, he finally told me to stop the test. I pressed the stop button, but the breaker kept smoking. Mr. Engineer looked confused. I explained again this was a magnetic-only breaker with no thermal element, and we had just cooked it until it burned. My co-worker told him the breaker was ruined and couldn't be used again. Then I asked him to bring a spare breaker from inventory. The color drained from his face. He told us they didn't have a spare. My co-worker looked shocked. He told Mr. Engineer this was for a fire pump and regulations required spare parts on hand. Mr. Engineer explained they were supposed to order spares last quarter, but budget cuts prevented it. I was surprised. A chemical plant without a spare fire pump breaker was dangerous and against regulations. I told him he needed to get one immediately since the fire pump couldn't work with a damaged breaker. Mr. Engineer looked worried. He said they couldn't operate without the fire protection system. My co-worker told him he should have thought about that before making us destroy a good breaker by ignoring professional advice. Mr. Engineer walked away quickly to call his boss. My co-worker and I looked at each other knowing Mr. Engineer was about to have a bad conversation. 30 minutes later, Mr. Engineer came back looking defeated. He told me his manager asked if we knew where to get a replacement today. I said the local electrical distributor might be open on Saturday, but warned they'd pay triple the normal price in rush fees. Mr. Engineer told me to make the call and said they'd pay whatever it cost. I called the distributor, who had one in stock, and agreed to deliver it right away for a big fee. While waiting, Mr. Engineer sat quietly checking his phone. When the new breaker arrived 3 hours later, he looked relieved but didn't apologize. I installed and tested the new breaker while Mr. Engineer watched without speaking. When finished, I gave him the paperwork. I noted the original breaker was replaced due to damage from unauthorized testing the customer requested. He grabbed the paper without looking at me. He asked if we were done. I confirmed the breaker was properly tested and installed, and the fire pump system could work again. While packing up, I heard Mr. Engineer on the phone with his boss. He tried blaming the problem on unclear manufacturer documentation instead of admitting he forced a test that destroyed expensive equipment. Later, my supervisor told me the replacement breaker, rush fees, and weekend labor cost the company over $6,000. All because Mr. Engineer couldn't admit he was wrong about something outside his expertise. 6 months later, I returned to the same facility for another job. Mr. Engineer wasn't there. When I asked about him, a maintenance worker left. He told me Mr. Engineer had been moved to the documentation department with no more field work. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.